Hi there, everyone. Jim here with Fantasy for the Ages, the father of this father-son show, coming at you today with just a short quick take episode, something fun to talk about. If you enjoy what I share with you today, I hope you'll look around at our channel, see all the things Zach and I are bringing out to you here. For this video, of course, like it. If you like the other things you're seeing, we hope you subscribe and join the people who are finding the fun here. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And in the show notes, you can find all the other ways to interact with us. Discord, social media, Patreon, all the goodness. Hope to see you around. What am I talking about today? Okay, in just a few brief minutes, I'm bringing to you 8 science fiction and fantasy books or series that may be too much for you. What do I mean by too much? They may be books that are just so massive in scope, so long, so deep, that they may not be your thing. Try to read them. They may overwhelm you. There just might be too much. These are all books that plenty of people think are absolute amazing literature. And you may try it because you hear all the hype and you may be overwhelmed. You may find yourself buried beneath the pressure. I'm here to warn you today. Depending on who you talk to, these are all fantastic books. They may not be fantastic for you. So if you try them and you are overwhelmed, you are not alone. In fact, I'm not recommending all of these, and I've got some takes on all of those too, but let's get into it first. Which ones am I talking about? All right, the first one up is the Dune Saga. Started by Frank Herbert, he wrote 6 books, great science fiction, soft science fiction novels. Then he passed away before he could finish. I mean, book 6 kind of leaves on a cliffhanger. Years later, his son Brian Herbert collaborates with author Kevin J. Anderson, and they finish the series. But much, much more than finish the series. A whole bunch of prequel work, number of novellas and short stories. All told, there's quite a bit of content now in Dune. I have read it all. I love it all. But I understand how some people can't manage. This series covers 11,000 years, really more than that. The scope is huge, and just the core first 6 novels that Frank Herbert wrote cover a huge span of time. That's a lot to keep track of. It's very convoluted in all of its politics and different organizations that are vying against each other for power, and then the God Emperor of Dune and his massive vision, the Golden Path. It's too much for some people. So that might be you. I do highly, strongly recommend Dune. If you have any leanings towards science fiction, understanding this is not hard science, and in fact, Frank Herbert kind of downplayed the technology aspects. He wanted to talk about the human condition and all of the different manipulations that can happen in the midst of things. Fantastic story. I really like the prequel stuff. Not everybody likes that as much, but you might find it's your thing. Don't be sad if you find you're overwhelmed. DNF it if it's not working for you. The second, The Wheel of Time. One of my favorite series of all time. 14 massive books, plus a somewhat smaller prequel. There's over 2,000 named characters in Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time. Robert Jordan had so many notes on all of these characters, and really there's only a piece of what he wrote put into these books. Many, many, many major plot lines, and so many things to follow that this becomes one of those series you gotta reread to truly appreciate it. Some of these plot lines are so deep and separated from others that there are main characters who don't appear in some books because, no, we've just got to talk about the other plots for a while and then we'll get back to things. That can be hard to keep track of then. You end up going, hey, where's Perrin? Hey, what happened to Matt Coffin? Chapters and chapters, even books where you don't see some of these core characters. Robert Jordan passed away before he could finish the series. There was one book left to write, and Brandon Sanderson was brought in by the estate. Here's his notes, finished the books, and we end up with the 3 largest books of the entire series instead of one finished book. There was just so much still to do. So a lot to follow, really deep, hard to truly appreciate the first time through, therefore might be too much for some people. Third, Malazan. Malazan, Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson. We also have Ian Esselmont writing a bunch of additional novels. Stephen Erickson also writing additional novels. The series is 10 core books, each of them really chunky, really deep, really comprehensive. You just get thrown in off the deep end here when you enter Malazan, and it can be too much for people. This is a conflict of men, ascendant beings, lesser gods, elder gods, immortals, happening over many continents, encompassing various planes of existence. There's so much to this. Now, I'm not done. I'm only basing that on the first 4 books. And I know there's so much more coming at me here. But I have found a home with Malazan. I'm absolutely loving it. I do intend to read the whole scope of it. Seriously, there's over 34 books, novels, novellas, short stories, all coming together, and still more being written in the Malazan universe. Not everybody can take on something like that. I'm going to be spending probably well over a year working my way through this series. I'm loving it. I'm committed to it. But if that's not you, then that's not you. And that's okay. My fourth one, Gene Wolfe's epic production of Book of the New Sun. 4 core novels and then a sequel. Wow, Gene Wolfe, this is a masterpiece of literary fiction. No denying that. He had a massive vocabulary and puts it to full use. I felt both stupid and getting smarter all the way through reading this. I constantly was looking up books, fortunately using the Kindle version, so I could just click on it and get the dictionary definition to pop up. But doing that, I also found out a lot of these words he was frickin' making up. So it wasn't good enough that he knew the entire English language. He also had to add his own words all the way through it. This is a dense story with many layers. We're talking science fiction here with a fantasy feel. It's got loads of foreshadowing. Yet again, it's one of these that you really need to reread to appreciate. It's nearly impossible to fully comprehend the scope of this story in just one read. I did not enjoy the Book of the New Sun. I appreciated it as a work of fiction. It's not something I plan to reread, therefore I will never get the full joy and understanding of what this work was about. It's one I'm going to say, no, it was too much for me, maybe. I did make it through, but it was a test of will to do so. If you enjoy it, good on you. It's not for me. Another one would be A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. Now this one, this is interesting. It's grimdark to the core. Nobody is safe in these novels. There are 5 of them, with 2 more to be written, but it's been 12 years since the last one. Supposedly, Martin's getting close on book 6, but then just still has plans for the finishing book. Will we ever get them? We have no idea. In the meantime, he has put out some supplemental works, some prequel writings, and of course, now we have on HBO, House of the Dragon, that's based on some of the prequel work. Great stuff in the world of Westeros and Essos, and I absolutely love A Song of Ice and Fire. But it's also somewhat meaty. There's so many different plot lines, so much manipulation going on. Again, different continents involved. Lots of different families and forces and magic, dragons, very comprehensive again. This one definitely also benefits from a reread. I could just say that about all of these, probably. But A Song of Ice and Fire is one that it might be too much for you because you put all that investment in and you may never get the finish. Will Martin come through? The dude is so rich, he doesn't have to write another thing. He's set. Will he help us out? We don't know. But that's another one on my list of books, series, might be too massive for you. Another one, The Sword of Truth by Terry Goodkind. Now this is 21 novels plus 6 novellas. Long, comprehensive story. Each of the books by themselves is not all that ridiculously long. They're just kind of average fantasy style. They're not short books, but they're not epically long books. But the story goes on and on and on and on. I mean, 21 novels. It starts a pretty straightforward story of Richard and Kaelin and a supporting cast of characters around them. And honestly, I like the story at the beginning, but it goes on and gets progressively darker and darker. And the plot just eventually starts to suck. I'll say that, okay? I don't recommend The Sword of Truth to anyone. There are people who, like me, have actually read them all. I read them all years ago. Honestly, I haven't gone back to double check. There might have been some late entries of those 21 novels that I didn't read. But when I read the series, I read it to its conclusion, and I didn't want any more. So that tells you where I stand. It's a massive series that I think most fantasy fans would struggle to get through these days because it just doesn't get very good. But just the beginning books, pretty entertaining, actually. The author, there are things I could say about Terry Goodkind based on what I've learned about him. You do your own research and decide if you even want to give any money to this series. The next is a standalone book, Stephen King's opus, The Stand. I freaking love this book, but this is a big, massive novel to work through, and not everybody's going to make it. Originally, this deep, deep work of fiction was rejected by the publishers because Stephen King comes in with a truck backing up to the publishing house saying, "Here's all my manuscripts. I know you need forklifts. Get them. It's worth it." And they said, "Dude, no one will buy a book this big. We will not publish this. You're going to have to trim it down." Okay, I'm making up the story of how that happened, but the truth is he was told, "You can't publish this book, it's too long." So he did. He originally published it in a shorter version, which is okay. I read that. But then later, when it was like, "Yes, Mr. King, what would you like us to publish next?" Because he was so successful, he said, "Well, I want the full unabridged version to get out there." And that's the one that I love. It's a really long, thick book. And it's really two stories that are definitely connected, definitely related to each other. But first, the downfall of humanity as we know it, primarily focused in the United States, thanks to a bioengineered virus, sort of. That society just completely breaks down and most of humanity is gone. But of those who are left, now the second part of the story turns into a battle of good versus evil. That evil being some of the forces that have been behind much of what's gone wrong for a long time in the world and now coming to take direct action. It's a great tale. I've read it multiple times, but I do know people who've tried and went, nah, not digging it, man. And maybe they need to read the shorter version. I think King is a masterful storyteller, so the more I could get, the more I enjoy it. The Stand, definitely one that gets my recommendation, but again, if you try it and you can't finish it, you're not alone. The final one I'm going to put out here is one that is not finished. That's Brandon Sanderson's The Stormlight Archive. There are 4 massively epic-sized novels in this series right now. Eventually, he tells us he's going to write 10 in the complete Stormlight Archive. But what we're waiting for right now is next year, 2024, we're supposed to get book 5 of the series, which will end the arc of the first half. Like there is a story he's telling that will conclude at the end of book 5. Then the next 5 will be a continuation of the greater story, but will also really be starting a new degree. I don't know how long he'll take to write those, but I want to see this first 5. But these first 4 books, wow. Okay, there's so much to them. They're not just super long. They're also so convoluted, so many rich plots. Many people reread these because they're finding things that he's planted in the earlier books that are paying off later and go, how did I miss that? The original prologue makes no sense in the first book. But as you work through, you're going, oh. A lot of that happens as you work your way through this masterwork of Sanderson. This is something you really need to be a Sanderson fan and read other books of his Cosmere, because this is kind of the culminating work of the Cosmere. You won't appreciate it enough if you aren't a full Cosmere reader. So I'd say don't waste your time. If you don't want to read all the books of the Cosmere, you'd be doing it a disservice. You won't understand enough of what you're seeing. It can be hard initially to get into this series. I struggled with the first book and actually set it aside and then had to come back to it later to try again. And I did finish and was glad I finished. But here's the problem with Sanderson books in general. He often starts out very slow. His pacing doesn't move along quick. He's doing a lot of world building, introducing you to characters, setting plots in place, and he takes his time. And then he gets to the end of the book and everything comes to a rush and a big finish. Many of us call that the Sanderlanche. Blah! It comes at you. The first book, that was worse than ever. The Sanderlanche is way at the end, and I was just dying for a lot of it. Each book in the series that Sanderlanche time starts sooner. So you're constantly building, but the world building doesn't take as much time as you move further into the series. And the last book of the 4 that are out so far, Rhythm of War, it's a rush. I really enjoyed that book. This is big, huge books, lots of characters, lots of things going on to try to figure out. Benefits from a reread might be too much for you, especially when I tell you, you gotta really read the rest of the Cosmere books, which are a lot of books now, to fully appreciate the Stormlight Archive. But if you're one of these, like me, enjoying Sanderson's writing and the Cosmere, this stuff is epic. Those are my 8 to talk about here today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them again. Share what you think about this list and tell me what other books or what other series you'd say are also so massive, so hard to comprehend or make it through, or too big a commitment that they might be too much for people. And let's talk about it a little bit. Again, down in the comments or join us on Discord. Our invite's in the show notes. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.